One of my children, he's kind of, we're going to keep that open, but then you should let them know to be quiet. If you have a mask, you should wear it. Orange County's doing real well, but LA just enforced an indoor mask rule that the sheriff of LA apparently has refused to enforce. I just heard that. People are pretty sick of wearing masks. So now you tell them to wear a mask, and even the sheriffs are saying, sorry. I mean, you would expect that like in Texas or something. Like if you had a Texan sheriff in LA, you would expect that he would say, I'm not going to enforce that mandate. Somehow or other, Chuck Norris wound up as the sheriff of Los Angeles. But we have the LA County sheriff saying, I'm not going to do it. It seems like people are really wearing thin. So forgive me for even asking, but if you got masks, you should wear them. Probably by next week or the week after, my assumption would be that Orange County will follow suit. It seems to be the way it's going. So maybe next time you come next week, throw a mask in your pocket, in your man bag. Come on down. Anyway, my son, I was going to say my youngest, and he is my youngest son, but my wife and I went and had one more kid. So he's our baby, but then we had another kid. So we have a baby daughter. She's our youngest, so my youngest son, who's 11 now. He just fought in a local jiu-jitsu tournament. And he did okay. He medaled. He got a silver medal, which is okay. He got on the podium, and but he didn't get the gold. And generally speaking, gold medals are the norm in my family. So it's just what happens. If there's if I gave each one of you $100 just for coming to the temple today, some of you wouldn't take it, but you'd all be really touched. And some of you would take it and be like, wow, Tukrum's a really nice guy. I used to say mean stuff about him all the time. I feel guilty about it. I'm going to pretend I never did that. He just put $100 in my pocket. And so some of you might not take the money for whatever reason, but you'd be touched that I offered it to you. Then if I turned around and I offered everybody in the room $1 million, had big bags of cash. Although that seems a little strange. Maybe I'm zelling people. But in any case, I'm giving everybody $1 million who walks in the door. But then I just give you 100. All of a sudden, that 100 I gave you, although the material amount hasn't changed, I gave you the same amount. First of all, probably less of you would be denying $1 million. $100, like, whatever, it's not that big of a deal in the US of A. But $1 million, that starts to be like a life-changing money for most people. It'd be a lot harder to just, no, no thanks, I'm good. Maybe some of you would do that. You're pretty pious people, I don't know for sure. But at the very least, if I'd only offered you 100, but I'd offered everybody else $1 million, you'd be thinking, what's the deal with Tukram? Have I done something to offend you? You might not get angry at me because you probably think I might give you the $1 million if you play it right. So it would probably be more in the mood of, have I done something to offend you, Prabhu? And, I thought we were close. What's going on? You might take that take. Then if I still denied you, then it might turn into some real hate. I'm a bigot, whatever. You just like whatever is you. Then you'd be if you're older, you'd be like he's bigoted against older people. And then whatever. If your skin was white, I'm bigoted against white people. If it was dark, somehow or other you find some way to get really upset at me about this. So it's a long-winded way of making the point that because most of my kids end up winning gold in their tournaments, and they have these undefeated records, and they're slaying dragons, then to just get a medal and not get gold is it all of a sudden, instead of like I got on the podium and I got a medal, instead of that being a cool thing, now it's I just got a silver, I just got a bronze. One of my eldest son just competed. His first match, he won 31-0. You can't even do that in wrestling. You text somebody at 15 points. It's like cruel and unusual punishment. And once you get to 15 points and the other guy hasn't scored on you yet, they just call the match because you're just humiliating the guy. But somehow in jiu-jitsu it doesn't happen like that. So my son went 31-0 in a 5-minute match in his first tournament of purple belt. It's like, he just got his belt like last week and he's killing everybody. Now he's got to go do it on a national stage. Then it's really going to count for something. This is just in the local circuit. But the result of that sort of standard, my son Covey will double gold in 2 weight classes. He'll fight in his weight class and the weight class above him, be undefeated in both. And my other son, getting no points were scored on him. He'll go a whole tournament without a single point being scored against him. So then this means the result is that Russ, my youngest kid, he's got this like huge amount of weight on his shoulders to perform, to live up to the natural expectations that are set merely by the performance of his siblings. You might be surprised, but I'm pretty relaxed when it comes to, my thing is, did you fight well? Did you do good? Did you make any mistakes? So legitimately, sometimes you go out there and the other guy's just better than you. And now it becomes you're just trying to survive and not get humiliated. But there's zero chance of winning. Against a skilled enough opponent, there's zero chance of winning. It's not even, something can happen in wrestling and jiu-jitsu where you get a crazy submission. But in boxing they talk about, and I'm really going off here, but in boxing they talk about a puncher's chance. Because you're punching each other, there's a chance that you might just get a lucky swing in. But the very nature of wrestling and jiu-jitsu, because it's very much pressure-based and it's very much based on positional dominance, it's much more difficult to get a lucky submission or a lucky pin against a much more skilled opponent, because the very nature of the contact is he's gradually, like a chess game, he's crushing down your options. If you get a chess master, he's never going to lose to a junior player, because it takes so many moves to collapse down your opponent's options that even if a mistake is made, you have time to recover from it. It's not a one-hit wonder like it would be with a punch. Did you guys follow that? Might be too much information for you, but just the way I roll. Sorry, I missed your tangent today. So yeah, my youngest son has these big shoes to fill. He's got a big weight on his shoulder, and it's even become a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, because if he doesn't get a gold medal, and if he doesn't get a gold medal and have no one score any points on him, he feels a little bit bummed, even if he otherwise does quite well. And even if I'm super chill about it and I turn it into an educational moment, he's 11. He doesn't, it's not like I can make some huge, long philosophical argument to him. All 11-year-olds have some kind of attention deficit disorder just innately. So that just happened. And I was thinking about it. I was doing my best to preach to my kid on the way home, and For me, I want to fix a mistake every time they go out and train. Those mistakes don't repeat themselves. You start developing good habits, and pretty soon some real growth has happened. So he gets a little sleepy, my 11-year-old. Kind of seems like he's sedated or something like that. And then he tries to get beat up a little bit. He's like a Rocky Balboa. It's like you punch him in the face a few times, and then he wakes up and starts to do his best work. So that's just the way he rolls. You get this in arm wrestling. Some guys, they hit right from the beginning, and they give you a big speed hit because they got a lot of fast twitch muscle fiber. And other guys don't quite have that, and so they do the hold. And they absorb all that. They hold, and then you're weakened because you gave them everything you had, and then they turn the tables. He's that second guy. He gets hit a few times, he gets knocked around, he gets angry, and then he starts to do his best work. So we kind of verbally slap him around now right before the match. So he walks into the first match a little hot and a little activated. You see this sometimes in boxing matches where the coaches will punch their what would you call them? They're not really clients. They'll punch their fighters. The coaches will punch their fighters in the face, at least smack them around good. Open hand, sometimes a little bit of a closed fist, but they'll get them going a little bit. In mixed martial arts, sometimes you'll see fighters hitting themselves all over their body quite hard as they're trying to harden themselves up. Samurai, I don't know if it actually happens or not. It's not like I know a bunch of samurais, but at least if all the movies I've seen accurately portray samurai culture, and it's not like I haven't read like samurai literature and Bushido literature, but I've never come across this. But they cut themselves. That way their opponent doesn't draw first blood on them. They draw on their own blood, and they walk into the fight having you don't get the satisfaction of drawing my blood first. I've already drawn my own blood. So we got him to wake up a little bit and walk into the fight hot. And he's got a wrestling background, so it's a jiu-jitsu tournament. So he blasted the other kid. Blast double, took the first kid down. Blast double, took the second kid down. Somehow got caught in a weird reverse triangle. I don't even know how he got caught in a reverse triangle off a double leg. I'm not even sure what happened. But anyway, that's what happened if you know jiu-jitsu. And he got stuck there for 5 minutes because the other kid just held on for dear life and didn't try to do anything to advance his position. But that was an improvement for me. I was like, hey, son, you improved. You went in hot. You exerted your will. You dominated your opponents from the beginning. You might have lost, but that's okay. I was trying to encourage him. So this just happened, like 1 minute before I walked in. And I just sort of, like a whole class came to my mind. And so here's the class. That was all just a warm-up to get your attention. That was all just a warm-up to get your attention. So again, to recap, I got 6 kids. A number of them compete. Some of them are phenoms. And it puts a big weight on the youngest shoulders, because if they don't have a perfect, flawless record, they feel bad, even though they should be good. Most of you probably be good if you got medal and you got on the podium. He doesn't feel like that. He feels bummed out. I explained why with my little analogy about the 100 and the million. It's just whatever you walk in at, that's the standard. There's weird things like 6 of the 10 strongest guys in the world work out the same gym. Because somebody went in and just did something amazing on the squat rack, and all the other guys around were like, oh, you can do that? I'm going to do that too. And their bodies just grow to keep up with the Joneses. And somehow or other, in like some city in Ohio, 6 of the 10 strongest guys in the world happen to all be hanging out together, living together. That's not actually true. It's just the competition upgraded everybody, and everybody got good. So there was like a guy who did a meta-analysis of Olympic athletes, and the age that most Olympic athletes who medal in the Olympics, the age they start their sport at. Guess what the age that most Olympic athletes who medal in the Olympics in their college years, the age they start their sports at? 4, right? Right? I would think that, right? 3 or 4, 5 at the latest, right? 13. 13. The reason is, if you start at 3 or 4 or 5, you peak around 16 or 18 because your tendons and ligaments can only take so much abuse. And by the time you're in your early 20s, at the age when people are going to the Olympics, for most sports, there are some sports where there's an exception, you're an old man or an old woman. Your ligaments, your tendons, your joints, they can only take so much abuse. Tell them to stop playing basketball. Thank you. So yeah, the age of 13. Surprisingly, right? Now those kids are athletic, but they don't start to really freak out on their sport. They play a bunch of sports, and then they hone in when they're 13. So that's a great factoid to throw at my 11-year-old. You shouldn't even really be worried about this right now. If you go too hard, you're going to burn out. Your brothers might burn out for all you know. And it's really the tortoise and the hare. It's really the parable of the tortoise and the hare applied to a specific sport, to a specific thing, athleticism, the Olympics, so on. And so those people that are able to stick with something for a long period of time, they time it right, they peak appropriately, that timing is more important than anything. And just being a flash in the pan at a young age, and then you've been becoming a one-hit wonder, a shooting star, a child actor, right? Those guys usually don't fare too well. You know, I mean, the abuse aside, that's a whole nother incredibly unfortunate phenomenon. But there's also just a lot of times they don't age well. A huge star, and I mean, whatever. There's some who bump the hump, but you got like a child star on Nickelodeon, and then they have like a "Where Are They Now?" and you're like, you know, you're working in some fast food joint in your 40s. And you look like you're 80, you know? So, yeah. So anyway, I thought about 3 verses in the Gita. Because really what we're talking about with my son, with my 11-year-old, is he needs to learn to be a little stoic. He needs to learn to be a bit zen and a bit detached from the natural comings and goings of life. Because if you think you're always going to win, man, are you set up for disappointment. You think things are always going to go your way? It is guaranteed that you're going to be miserable in due course of time. Just all on its own, you've got old age that comes for everybody. I mean, time is ticking. Entropy. Time is entropy. Entropy is the disintegration of all things material from their current state. We don't want our body to disintegrate. I think Heraclitus said that I'm chained to the carcass of a dying animal and I do not know why. He was talking about old age. I'm chained to the carcass of a dying animal. We can love and think and feel almost without limit, and then we have these bodies that enforce sharp, increasing limitations on us. But you don't have to wait till you get old to be disappointed and betrayed and hurt and sad and suffer with tragedy and reversal and sickness and loss. No way. Those things for sure happen. Just look at your own life. And it only gets more intense as time goes on. Like, you lost the video game, or your buddy's better than you at video games when you're a kid, or your buddy got a toy that you didn't get, or they didn't have any green lollipops left at the bank when you went. They're still doing that. I highly doubt they're still doing that. But you go from that to some teenage heartbreak to people dying on you. By the time you're in your 20s or 30s, people are dying on you. So the very nature of this world is you're gonna get dealt some wins and some losses, some ups and some downs, some reversals, some good times and bad times. That's guaranteed. And Krishna has a verse about this. But actually, what the class that occurred to me as I was walking in the room, I noticed an evolution of the teachings of the Gita, which I'd never noticed before, so I want to share it with you now. I've been just doing like a regular old tell you about my day and talk about my family thing. But surprise, surprise, I'm a big pundit. I'm about to show all of you. So here we go. At the very outset of the Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, Macha sparshas tu kaunteya. He says that, but these are only sense perceptions. Macha sparshas tu kaunteya. These things are only sense perception. Shita, Ushna, Sukha, Dukkha, Daha. They give happiness and distress. They give heat and cold. So summer comes along, you're feeling hot. If you're anywhere but in Southern California, you're miserable right now. Even if you're in Southern California, it sucks. Unless you're in Laguna Beach, right on the coast, where it's 10, 15 degrees cooler than anywhere else. Did any of you come from inland a little bit? It's warmer, right? Nice to see you, Ajay Prabhu. Very nice to see you. Can you go grab 2 chairs for the 2 of them and just bring them in from the front? Thank you. We got 2 chairs coming for you. Of course. It's just the nature of summer. It was 130 degrees in Death Valley last weekend. Hasn't been that hot in Death Valley since 1913. Hottest temperature ever recorded in the world, Death Valley. 134 degrees. We're wondering if that's going to happen. 1 billion fish died up in off the coast of Oregon when that last heat wave hit. Heated up the water. They just couldn't deal. My buddy Kat's a fireman. He's on mandatory employment, working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week until further notice, because there's so many fires raging. Heat and cold, summer, winter. Sukha dukkha daha, giving pleasure and pain. It's just the nature of this world. That if you hang out in this world for 5 minutes, you're going to get your fair share of pleasure and your fair share of pain. Seems like they come naturally, automatically. You don't just get one. You get both. That's the duality of this world. You're going to win some and lose some. But Krishna starts off with just a really simple Stoic argument. Macha sparshas tu kunteya shita ushna sukha dukkha daha. Pleasure and pain, happiness and distress, it's just sense perception. Agama apayina. It comes and it goes. Agama comes, apayina goes. Agama apayina anitya. It's impermanent. It's coming and going. Like, imagine if you went in the water. Just imagine for a moment. You went in the water. And you got really upset whenever waves came. You didn't go in the pool. You went in the ocean. And you were super happy when there were no waves. And then you got super depressed when there were waves. What a fool are you? Or imagine you went into a wave pool. And you got really bent out of shape whenever the waves came and you were happy in between the waves. It'd be ridiculous. The nature of a wave pool is you're going to get some of both. Why would you walk into a situation where it's 100% guaranteed that you're going to get both and limit your happiness to 50% of the time? You've already failed at life. You haven't learned how to thrive in adverse circumstances. You've already set yourself up for being depressed and bent out of shape and bummed half the time. It comes and goes. It's impermanent. Tangs titikshasva bharata. Titikshasva means, it's in the imperative. It means you must tolerate. It comes from the Sanskrit root tej, which means sharp. You must tolerate that sharpness. So Krishna's first argument in the Gita towards Arjuna, in terms of a behavioral response to the nature of this world, where you win some and lose some, you get old, you die, you suffer reversal, you get dealt a hand from the deck of life that's partially good and partially bad. Krishna's first behavioral response of how you should respond to that existential reality is you got to be tolerant. Did you follow this? So the first thing Krishna teaches is tolerance to the inevitable changes of nature throughout your day, throughout your week. The classic example given by Indian pundits is you must take your bath in the winter, which doesn't make any sense if you've got a hot water heater. But you see, it's a little dated. The analogy isn't like perfect, but this is based on not having indoor heating, not having indoor plumbing, and not having indoor heating of your water. And so if you bathe outside in a river, in the wintertime, the river is extremely cold. Surprisingly, if you bathe in a well and it's really cold out, the water's actually warm. How many of you have spent time in your life bathing out of wells? When you bathe out of a well, dude? You're from LA, huh? My airport never gets cold. What are you even talking about? Huh? I'm in like this much. Raise your hand again. Let me see who I'm talking to. Did you grow up bathing in a well? As a child?
In school. We had to jump into the
In school. But in your home you had indoor plumbing?
Yeah, pumps.
You had pumps. Okay, pumps. Same thing. Pump or well is the same. For the purpose of my point, pumps and wells are the same thing. He's so elder. He's like, no, we did not have a well. We had a hand pump. But those means the same thing. We have a hand pump attached to a tube well, or whether you're actually pulling buckets out of wells, it's the same thing. Hey, what happens in the wintertime if you take a bath out of a well or a pump? What's the water feel like in the wintertime? It's super cold out. Sometimes it's freezing. It depends on where your water's coming from. If your water's coming straight fed from a river, it's absolutely freezing. It's like, somehow it gets colder than 32 degrees. Because it's moving, it's able to actually get super cooled and not freeze over. And so you feel like you're being poked by ice. But the air's so cold outside, the sun has heated the water in the nighttime. The water's buried underground, and so it doesn't fully cool down to the temperature of the air outside, which gets really cold. But the water in the well stays a little bit more uniform, and you actually feel like you're bathing in lukewarm water. You ever have this experience, Adi Prabhu?
Yes.
It feels a little lukewarm. It's actually nicer, right? Just like when it's super freezing outside and you jump in the water, sometimes it's not as cold. You feel a little warmer. You'll still get hypothermia. Even you jump in like 82 degree water out in the South Pacific. If you stay in there long enough, it cools you down below 96 degrees and you get hypothermia. It just takes days for you to die from it, as opposed to minutes in other circumstances. So you take your bath in the wintertime, you're bathing in a river. It's freezing, but it's wintertime, but you still got to take your bath of it. And you cook in the summertime. It's hot, it's flaming hot, but you still got to go to a fire and cook every day. So Krishna's first instruction is just about tolerating the change of the seasons that comes naturally. Did you guys follow this? That evolves pretty quickly into a modified and intensified instruction from Krishna. Krishna says, Yoga sta kuru karmani, siddhya siddhyo samobhutva samadvam yoga uchate. Krishna says that in Jaya and Ajaya, victory and defeat, siddhya siddhyo in both success and failure, samobhutva, sama. It's the same word. It's the root of the English word same. The English word same comes from the Sanskrit root sam. Sama bhutva. You must become, having become equipoised. Samatvam yoga uchate. That equanimity, same word, samatva. That sameness, that equanimity, yoga uchate. That's called yoga. The first instruction, and yoga sta kuru harmony, situated in that yoga, do your duty. And yoga karma sukoshalam. Yoga is the art of work. So, Krishna, his first teaching is that your response to the heat and cold, pleasure and pain you automatically experience just by existing in this world, with the change of the seasons and the change of the tides, you need to merely tolerate that. You follow? That's your behavior. You just have to tolerate it. Did you guys follow that?
Yeah.
That then, thank you for that feedback. That then gets intensified. And now you have to do your duty. Yoga sta kuru karmani. Situated in yoga, do your duty. Samadvam yoga uchate yoga karma sukoshalam. Yoga is equanimity. In the face of you're doing your duty, and sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. The first instruction is merely about tolerating. The second instruction is about tolerating without losing any enthusiasm. Winston Churchill one time said, success is struggling from one failure to another without any loss of enthusiasm. And he, like, by all accounts, should have died. He was in terrible shape. He was morbidly obese, addicted to alcohol, smoked like a chimney. Somehow or other, he, like, almost resurrected himself like a zombie to help Britain through World War II, which is one of the darkest times in their multi-thousand-year history. And then he kind of just disappeared, croaked relatively shortly thereafter. It's like a zombie who came back to life, just staved off death for 5 minutes by sheer force of will. I don't think he actually said it. I think I researched it at one point, but he's famous for saying, if you're going through hell, keep going. Yeah. Regardless of who made that one up, it's great. And if you came up with that on Instagram, you don't have to tell me it's Winston Churchill. That's a standalone. I'm going to like your page just because you came up with that one. So Krishna's teaching evolves, and he moves from mere tolerance, mere stoicism, mere acceptance of the inevitables, ups and downs of life. And then that becomes doing your duty unfailingly, irrespective of the results, in good times and bad, in sickness and in health, for richer or for poor. That's kind of standard marriage vow. And so I think that's a very interesting evolution I'd never noticed before. A lot of times when you structure an argument, a friend of mine, John Riggs, who Audrey Prabhu also knows, so a bunch of you might know him, John Riggs, who's our gardener here for about a decade. It was wild. He left our movement. He came as a teenager, and then he split and was gone for decades. He came back. So he was 15, 20 years my senior, almost a generation older than me. But he was one of my students. And he came back after a long hiatus in his spiritual life and got inspired by him. He was a mountain of a man, 6'4", 260 pounds, Laguna Beach surfer, born and bred in Laguna Beach. Taught all my kids how to swim. And he came back and then became our gardener. He was an expert gardener, an amazing gardener. And then he went and got esophageal cancer, lost 80 pounds in 3 months, and died in his 40s, leaving behind 2 teenage kids. And he didn't notice he had cancer. He didn't talk about it. I actually had to take him to get a CAT scan done because he just gotten that frozen thing where he didn't want to admit it. And just actually sitting right out there on the patio, I told him he had 6 weeks to live. I told him he had cancer and he had 6 weeks to live in one conversation. We sat there, he cried in my arms. It was really heavy. And then 5, 6 weeks later, I sat by his bed while he passed away. The way they do it, I'm not an educated healthcare professional who's been trained in bedside manner. So he was my friend, so I just sat down and told him like it was. I let him take the hit. It was brutal. We got through it. I mean, he got through it. It was amazing. He cried. He was really scared. He denied it. He went through all the kind of standard, popular, unproven reckonings of grief that you find as if it's some sort of universal thing online. But he ultimately died with a smile on his face. Said he was ready to go. Died with a smile on his face with cure time going on. It was a beautiful thing. It's beautiful watching devotees contend with the inevitable reality of death in this world. They become peaceful. They gracefully let go because they spent a lifetime learning to gracefully tolerate and let go and do their duty. And so when their duty becomes dying, they're also ready to do that. Anyway, the way you're supposed to do it, if you're sophisticated, if you're trained, is you say to somebody, hey, that doesn't look good, we should biopsy it. Hey, that's malignant, it might be cancer. Hey, that is cancer, it might be terminal. Hey, it is terminal, you might only have a few weeks left. Hey, in fact, you do only have a few weeks left. And you tell the person that over 5 or 6 successive days. And each day, that earth-shattering knowledge becomes imbibed by them. And then they come back the next day and you give them the next installment. And over a period of days, you help them reckon with their mortality. I made a mistake, told him all at once, which is why he turned into a shambling mound outside. And I had to, I learned. I've done better in subsequent iterations of this dance. That was part of my duties as a priest. And so Krishna is such a sophisticated and thoughtful theologian and philosopher. And he starts off with something really simple. Hey, it's going to be hot out and cold out sometimes. Sometimes you're going to feel happy and sometimes you're going to feel sad. Just tolerate it. And then that morphs into an argument that you actually need to do your duty while tolerating. And you need to become equipoised, not just in your mental state, but in your actual behavior, where you continue to do your duty irrespective of what the result is. Did you guys follow that? And then the last point that Krishna makes, which is really what I wanted to get to. He says, Ye tu sarvani karmani mayi sanyas matpara. Matpara, thinking of me as the highest object. Mayi sanyasya, renouncing everything to me. Sarva karmani, all your activities. Ye tu, but one who does that. Ananyena yogena dhyanta mam upasate, and meditates on me, and unflinchingly stays connected with me in that way. Te sham, for them. Samudharta mrityu samsara sagarat. I become the uplifter. I become the savior from the ocean of death. Nachirena bhavami I become that immediately. This is a further evolution that Krishna gets to. So on one hand, a great first step for everybody is just to notice that a little bit of bipolar, sometimes you feel up, sometimes you feel down. You just simply have to deal with that. If you have borderline personality disorder, which is a serious cluster B personality disorder, it's a major problem in life, where you have wildly competing emotions living in you simultaneously. And the classic work on this is a book called I Hate You, Don't Leave Me. I hate you, don't leave me. You would have met people like this. They're just all over the place. They're running hot in both directions simultaneously. It's like almost like a miracle they don't like run into themselves and knock themselves out. They're absolutely in love with you and they absolutely hate you, and it's like amour fou. It's like crazy love, crazy relationships. The therapy for somebody with borderline personality disorder, Shri knows, because she has borderline personality disorder. No, because she's a licensed clinical social worker who works as a therapist. The therapy is you have to teach people to take themselves less seriously. You have to cognitively reframe for people so they just learn to take themselves a little less seriously throughout life. It's Stoicism. It's Marcus Aurelius. It's just the basics of tolerance. They have to learn to imbibe that. And so as these radical emotions hit them, they have to learn just not to take themselves so seriously. That by itself is incredibly empowering and uplifting. It's phenomenal advice. It will change your world. It will change your world. Your cognitive response to the external, constantly changing reality of this world, of the tide coming in and going out, of the waves coming and going, of getting sick and well, of heat and cold, of pleasure and pain, of summer and winter. You just need to learn to just keep it cool. Stay cool. It's funny, the word cool is a loan word in the Hindi. So if you're talking to some super Indian person who knows like 2 words of English, you can be like, "Are you cool?" And they'll go, "I am cool." And they don't realize that that's actually a sophisticated piece of slang in the US. But even they have like 4 words, you know? My Spanish is limited, but I have epic Spanish slang. And so when I speak Spanish to people, they get blown away because I break out these cool pieces of slang that make them think I'm some kind of, like they think I must, it's like they're like La Raza. They must think I'm like Mexican or something like that. And so, anyway, you just need to learn to have a cool response. That's brilliant. And then Krishna, because he's got a really beautiful message to give us, he then very quickly evolves that into doing your duty unfailingly, unflaggingly, in all circumstances. And that actually connects you to a wisdom tradition, and eventually connects you to the deity. And so now it's not just a mental cognitive response to an ever-changing reality, it's a behavioral response. You continue to do your duty. And those people win at life. If my 11-year-old can handle not getting a gold medal and stick with it, he could become a world champion. He's well positioned for that. Life is really the tortoise and the hare. You got to find the right thing and stick with it. I mean, we're masters of this. Hare Krishna people, what do? We're excellent philosophers. And we're incredible rhetoricians. And we convince you to chant Hare Krishna and follow some pretty serious vows surrounding chastity and sobriety and purity. And then we convince you to do those things every day for the rest of your life. It's quite an astounding fact. If you said to anybody, when Srila Prabhupada initiated the first devotees in 1966, he did not tell them what their initiation vows were. He initiated them, and then he posted their initiation vows on a mimeograph sheet some days later, and they were stunned when they read what they'd signed up for. I mean, being a vegan now is like nothing. Mike Tyson's a vegan, for crying out loud. Arnold Schwarzenegger went vegan. I mean, come on. It's like nothing. You can go to Ralph's and have like a vegan extravaganza extraordinaire feast of organic, incredible things. When I was a child, we had to walk to school uphill both ways in the snow, barefoot and pregnant. Anyway, those early devotees, it was incredible what they signed up for. But that's what we do. We tell people, hey, you should be saintly today. And you know what? If it was good today, it's good every day. Why don't you do that every day for the rest of your life? Let's chant 16 rounds a day, 365 days a year, forever. Let's follow the 4 regular principles we follow forever. Vegan for life, down for life, chaste for life, sober for life, saintly for life. And Krishna makes the core of this argument here when he says that yoga is when yoga stuck guru karmani. Siddhya siddhyo samobhuva samadvam yoga uchite yoga karma sukho shalam. Dukkha samyoga viyogam yoga sangyatam. Do your work in yoga. Whether you succeed or fail, do your activity. That's what it means to be equipoised, is you continue doing your duty. It's a behavioral, not merely a cognitive response, but a behavioral response. And yoga is that art of work. And in fact, that activity unlinks you, unyogas you from your, yoga means link. It unyogas you from your yoga to suffering. Krishna says yoga is when you unyoga yourself from your yoga to suffering. Dukkha samyoga viyogam yoga sangyatam. He uses the word 3 times in 6 words. Dukkha samyoga viyogam yoga sangyatam. When you unyoga yourself from your yoga to suffering, that's called yoga. It's literally what he says. When you unlink yourself from your linkage to suffering, that's called linkage. That's called connection. When you disconnect yourself from your connection to suffering, that's the real connection. And how do you do that? You do your duty no matter what happens around you. Heaven can burn, hell can freeze. You follow your vows. You follow your rules. You have character. You have integrity. And in that way, functionally, you transcend this world. You functionally transcend this world. You always land on your feet. And every day becomes a good day. And you succeed, irrespective of what's happening around you. You carry sunshine in your pocket. And so what's a cognitive tolerance becomes a behavioral transcendence. You guys feeling me? You get this? And then it doesn't stop there. For those people who serve me in this way, I feel great compassion. Krishna says this, I feel my heart shaking out of compassion for them. I, within their hearts, dispel the darkness of ignorance with the shining lamp of knowledge. I become their savior. I become their uplifter. The result of, in a devotional tradition, doing your duty and having this transcendental response to the world is that becomes an offering to Krishna. That becomes a way that you show Krishna you love him. And the result of that is that opens the door for Krishna to reciprocate compassionately. And when an unlimitedly powerful being becomes compassionate to you, that's called grace. And that moves mountains, and that makes the impossible possible. And so there's a 3-step evolution that takes place in the Gita. That you learn to stay equipoised and cognitively stay stoic as things are going up and down. You then take it to the next level and you have a behavioral response where you functionally become transcendental as you continue to do your duty and keep your commitments irrespective of external affairs. And then that becomes a way you show your love for the deity, which opens the door and creates receptivity in you for Krishna to pour compassion into you. And the compassion of an omnipotent being is unlimited grace, and that makes miracles happen in your life. And then the deck is always stacked in your favor. And the universe is your friend. And you can start to feel Krishna's warm embrace even in difficult times. And you see Krishna drawing you near through all the good and bad that happens in your life, and you feel and experience that. And you stand you sit in the palm of God. And life becomes the Lord caressing you and drawing you closer and helping you. And then the world becomes unlimitedly beautiful. And even the most tragic of circumstances has powerful, otherworldly, cathartic lessons in it. And you start to see them, and you step into a new universe. A universe where the whole world is your whole experience is a conversation with divinity. Do you see the evolution? So you start where you're at, you take it to the next level, and it's almost limitless how far that can go. And one success builds on the other. You get these building blocks of success. And just like I told my son, hey, let's get you not to be sleepy. Let's call that a win. Hey, you podium. Let's call that a win. Hey, you did your best. Let's call that a win. Hey, you brought your A game. Let's call that a win. Let's focus on the things we can control and worry a heck of a lot less about the things we can't. And as far as I can see, these are the far-reaching, almost infinite-reaching implications of a proper understanding of the tortoise and the hare. The parable of the tortoise and the hare. All right, I went a little over time. Thank you very much. Let's do a little kirtan. Hare Krishna.